Who's bribing them?
What makes you think that they're in it for the cash as opposed to genuinely caring about the kids?
Pharmaceutical companies have been fined the biggest criminal fines in history. Pfizer got $2.3 billion fine. What was it for? Criminal fraud, misrepresenting data in the drugs.
You got the Great Reset. They're trying to take over the world, aren't they? The vaccines, I reckon, are fake. They're delivering some crazy stuff, connecting you to 5G stuff. Yeah, it's a fact. It's proven. There is no such thing as a virus. It was a fear campaign to get the jabs into you.
These people want us to just be slaves to the system, to be controlled.
And who's these people?
The globalists.
I'm very pro-vax.
The COVID vaccine in particular. Are you pro that vaccine?
No. Is it actually a vaccination? No, it's not.
Why not call it a vaccine?
Because it's not a vaccine.
But why not?
Because it doesn't do what vaccinations do. Dan Andrews is the latest Harvey Weinstein. Like, I'm not having Dan's little prick in my body if I don't want it.
We're in a mental health epidemic right now that is far worse than what COVID could have been. When you have taken away people's freedom of movement, 5K lockdowns, 1 hour of exercise like we're prisoners in our own country, there was a suicide epidemic happening silently during the pandemic, and there was no responsibility taken for it.
I'm an epidemiologist at Monash University.
Fantastic.
Interesting that you studied medicine and you're against.
Yes. Can I walk you through why I'm currently against mandates? And I want you to push back a little bit and maybe see what I might be missing. Ladies and gents, welcome back to another episode of Common Ground Conversations, where we ask the important but controversial questions and then try to find common ground. We are here at the Freedom Rally in Melbourne. We're going to be asking people the question, vaccine mandates, for or against. Let's see what people believe and why. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit of context before we dive into today's episode. I'm going to preface this with do your own research. Making sense of the pandemic, vaccines, and the appropriate relationship between government and the individual is nothing short of a clusterfuck. I'm not going to claim that I have all the answers, nor am I an expert of any sort. I'm just a curious lad trying his best to make sense of things and then share my reasoning with you. So, vaccine mandates, for or against. For our Instagram followers, it was roughly a 25% to 75% split, with most people being anti-mandates, whilst, interestingly, also simultaneously believing in the efficacy of vaccines, generally speaking. And this is a nice segue into clarifying exactly what do people believe, because it is not as simple as anti-vaxxers versus smart people. Vaccine mandates, for or against?
For.
Tell me why.
Because people are fucking morons.
Because I'm against.
You're against.
Alright, so does that make me a fucking moron? Which unfortunately is more often than not the prevailing politically correct narrative. In my estimation, there are 4 general positions that people tend to hold, and we've got at least one person from each of these positions in today's episode. Those 4 positions are: position number 1, people who are anti-vaccines and anti-mandates. These are the people who tend to say things like, vaccines don't work, and the government shouldn't tell me what to do with my body. Position number 2, people who are pro-vaccines, just not the COVID ones, and who are also anti-mandates. These are the people who tend to say things like, vaccines do work, but we don't have enough data on the COVID vaccines to know that they're safe and effective, plus the government shouldn't tell me what to do with my body anyway. Position number 3, people who are pro-vaccines, including the COVID ones, but they're still anti-mandates. These are the people who tend to say things like, vaccines do work, we have enough data on the COVID vaccines to know they're safe and effective, but the government still shouldn't tell me what to do with my body. And position number 4, people who are pro-vaccines, including the COVID ones, and who are also pro-mandates. These are the people who tend to say things like, vaccines do work, we have enough data on the COVID vaccines to know that they're safe and effective, and the government should have the power to implement mandates in the name of protecting the community and ensuring the greatest good. Now that we've got those various positions laid out, it can also be useful to drill down and identify the core premises that people tend to disagree upon, a crucial step whenever you're trying to find common ground with someone. In this case, there are 3 main ones. 1, how dangerous is COVID? 2, how safe and effective are the vaccines? And 3, what is the appropriate relationship between citizen and government? Combining these 2 frameworks, firstly, the understanding of the various positions, and secondly, what core premises people tend to disagree upon, here is my position on vaccine mandates. In a nutshell, I'm pro-vaccine, generally speaking. I'm tentatively pro-COVID vaccine, but I am still anti-vaccine mandates, and here's why. COVID-19 is undoubtedly a very infectious virus that has killed a large number of people. However, those that have died have been mostly the elderly and people with pre-existing chronic illnesses. 90% of the deaths have been 60 plus years old, and 69.5% of the deaths had pre-existing chronic conditions. So the follow-on question from there is, how much of their freedoms are the healthy majority expected to give up in the name of protecting an at-risk minority? This is a question that needs to be asked and a conversation that needs to be had, not one that is stifled or swept under the rug. And just to demonstrate this point in more detail, where I live in Victoria, Australia, we went through some of the toughest, if not the toughest, lockdown restrictions worldwide. We spent close to half a year in lockdown, the longest one lasting over 100 days, during which I couldn't leave my house for more than 30 30 minutes a day. I had to remain within a 5-kilometer radius of my house. I couldn't see my family who were only a 15-minute drive away, and I could only legally see one person during the lockdown period, my girlfriend at the time, lest I be breaking the law. Again, how much of my freedoms am I, a member of the healthy majority, expected to give up in the name of protecting an at-risk minority? This same question applies to vaccines. I'm not saying that there is a clear answer, I'm just saying that we need to have the conversation. Now, I'm generally supportive of vaccines. They're incredible technology that do a whole lot of good, a testament to human ingenuity and scientific progress. But these COVID vaccines are different in a number of ways to the other vaccines that I've received throughout my life for two main reasons. One, some of them use mRNA technology, like the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, and compared to other types of vaccine, this technology is relatively new. And two, we don't have as much long-term safety data on the COVID vaccines compared to other vaccines. We simply can't yet. They were rolled out more quickly than usual, understandably, because we were in the midst of a global pandemic. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're unsafe. It just means exactly what I said. We don't have as much long-term data on their potential side effects compared to other vaccines that I might have received throughout my life. So there is a slightly greater risk element in that respect. Now, why is it seemingly politically incorrect to state such a thing? I don't believe it should be. And also, I don't think the public health messaging, at least in Australia, was particularly forthright in acknowledging this additional risk being taken by those who got the vaccine, myself included. And that avoidance or lack of forthright, comprehensive messaging can breed a sense of suspicion and loss of trust in government, as well as feed and stoke more conspiratorial thinking amongst the conspiratorial types. In general, people don't like being spoken to like they're dumb and given oversimplified messaging as a consequence, even if its intent comes from a good place of making things simple and easy to digest for the public. I think if the vaccines are safe and effective and that information in its entirety is made accessible to the public, and the public will make the right decision with respect to whether or not they get the vaccine. In my eyes, it's not the government's role to mandate them, nor stifle or suppress dissenting voices. With all that said, as per usual, I'm absolutely open to being convinced otherwise, for I am human, all too human, and certainly blind or incompetent somewhere that you can help me fix. So I invite you to share your position in a comment below and point out where you agree or disagree with me. I'll be reading all of your comments, and if you ever want to chat with us in real time and unpack some of these juicy, important but controversial questions, then head on over to our Instagram. We schedule in a live every week. The date and time will be in our bio, and the coming one is at these times. And lastly, it's also worth noting that today's footage is from two separate days. One that was a standard day of filming at Flinders Street Station, Melbourne, and the other, which was a rally that we attended. It was branded as the Freedom Rally, and they walked through Melbourne CBD from Parliament to the Royal Children's Hospital. Now for conversation numero uno, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy. What do you think these people are going to do about it, though? Who do you think you need to speak to if you want to change something?
I don't know. Who do you think?
Well, I would. These probably not these gentlemen.
Little signs on the back. Get in there.
Yeah. What does it say? Vaccinating our kids is. So who do you think needs to hear this?
Who do you think? Why didn't you answer your own question? Who do you think?
Well,
who do you think?
I
think everyone needs to hear it. These cops need to hear it. Everything needs to change. The whole system needs to collapse.
What do you believe and why?
What do I believe?
Yeah. So let's say, for example, with vaccines. Are you pro or against?
I'm against it. I've taken 3, and on the 3rd one, I started getting chest pains, and then I wanted to work as an allied health assistant, and they told me I had to take the influenza shot, and I said no more because it has graphene oxide in it. Okay, I'm not an intelligent, scientific type of mind, but I know what they're doing is wrong. I don't know what their agenda is.
Yeah, what's wrong about it?
What is wrong? You have to do the research. I'm not the one who should be speaking, but I know it's wrong. I feel it in my heart, I feel it in my soul, and I already know that my head is being played with. Okay? I already know that something's not right.
If you know that something's not right and you want it to change,
hospital! I'm trying to speak to the doctors. I want all these doctors and nurses to say this is wrong. If I care about patients, if I care about children, is my mortgage worth it? Is my rent worth it? Maybe I should...
Yeah, so what are they missing? Let's say you had a conversation with a doctor.
If I had a conversation. Their soul and heart. Okay, they're in it for the cash. I don't know who's bribing them. I don't know, if they feel like they're hostage in their head.
Yeah, what makes you think that they're in it for the cash as opposed to genuinely caring about the kids?
Because of the vaccine. Why would they be injecting children with vaccine when they know it's unsafe? They're smart people. They're not stupid. If I can work out this graphene oxide in the vaccine, I'm not exactly that bright. I'm sure they know so much more.
Vaccine mandates for or against? Well, Let's just see if pharmaceutical companies have ever been fined the biggest criminal fines in history. 2009, Pfizer got $2.3 billion fine. What was it for? Criminal fraud, misrepresenting data in the drugs, blah, 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 blah. At this point, the FDA are also corrupt, right? Think for yourselves, people, or you'll be injected until you're dead.
You got the Great Reset. They're trying to take over the world, aren't they? The globalist, rich elites. So the vaccines, I reckon, are fake. mRNA technology, they're delivering some crazy stuff which is connecting you to 5G stuff, yeah? It's a fact, it's proven. Scientists now are proving this stuff, yeah? The Australian government was corrupted 50 years ago and they've been sold out by the globalists, you know? And what they're taking away our freedom slowly.
Okay, I want to kind of see if we can bring it back and then
yeah, I know, that's my problem.
No,
yeah.
it's all right. And then we'll see where we find common ground and then build up from there. So,
I have nothing against vaccines, right? But what I've learned now recently, there is no such thing as a virus. There's never has been a virus. It's called exosomes. And what happens is
have some trouble
you have an immune response to the environment. Then you get sick, it's detoxification process, then it comes out of your cells. That's been proven. There is not one isolated sample of any virus in history. Okay, never have they isolated any sample of a virus.
Well, yeah, I studied medicine for 4 years. I definitely believe that there's such a thing as a virus.
Germ theory is called theory. Theory is fake. It's not proven. All right. You have an immune response to the environment, and it's the radiation, the food, the chemicals, and then when you have like symptoms, you have symptoms to the environment.
So let me see if I can better understand where you're coming from then. For something like the flu, do you believe that the flu is
the flu is real, but it's not a virus. The flu is
the influenza.
But hold on a minute. When you have the change of temperature, summer to winter, you have an immune response to the environment. You see, your body has to adjust to the different temperatures.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
So when someone gets COVID-19,
yep.
What exactly are they responding to in the
then you got to get into
the virus?
Well, you got to get into the PCR test. The guy who wrote the PCR test said it's not to be used for diagnosis, and then he mysteriously died before the pandemic, yeah? What about Event 201 simulation? They did a simulation of a coronavirus, said there's going to be an outbreak of coronavirus before coronavirus even started, and it's going to happen in Chile, and then 2 months later, it started in China.
Okay, so just so I understand your position.
It was a fear campaign to get the jabs into you. That's the thing. That's what it was.
Well, so if you believe that the virus is fake,
yeah.
And then that you believe that the vaccines aren't real or effective, or that
they're not effective at all. Well, there's an agenda behind it. It's called population control.
Tell me why.
Well, there's
what's this population control?
Well, they go to do like Bill Gates videos. They said with proper vaccines we can reduce the population by 10 or 15%. It's there.
Wait,
go and do research.
Can you clarify for me exactly what you believe in? So, hold on. Tell me about this Bill Gates. Oh
well, I've watched heaps of stuff. Bill Gates is always, mate. What do you do in Africa? They did testing, killed everyone in Africa and India too. You know.
What do you mean killed everyone?
Well, that's all trials. The vaccines. It was fake. They tested the people in Africa, then in India.
Trouble finding common ground.
That's fact.
No, that's
true.
all right. That's
true. There's a documentary called "Fall of the Cabal." Everyone needs to watch "Fall of the Cabal," and then you got. There's a secondary one. There's like 40 episodes, and they go through history, all right, of the cabal who took over the world, all right, the banking system, the fake banking system. Now what's happening is the people are waking up. They don't want the people to wake up.
I'm gonna stop you there and just jump in here. So, for me, I do believe that there is such a thing as virus. I do viruses, and so I just want to kind of lay out what I believe, and then maybe we'll see where you think I've gone wrong with my information.
Well, prove to me there's an isolated sample. It's in the CDC report. Everyone who's asked for a sample of COVID-19 virus, every doctor, there's maybe 300 doctors, they can't produce it because there is no sample of the virus.
But so,
okay? What they do is they get a bit of dead matter out of your nose, and then the PCR test multiplies it 10,000 times, all right? And you're not meant to do more than about 10 or 17 cycles. Australia was using 47 cycles. All right, why was the flu? Why we had no flu for a couple of years? All of a sudden the flu's disappeared. Oh, because you're wearing masks? No, because the flu is the COVID-19.
Just to clarify, so you believe that there are some people high up who are fraudulently manufacturing this data.
Yes, well, go back to who created the modern medicine, the Rockefellers, whatever it was.
Hold on. For population control was what you were saying.
Yeah, well, to control the masses.
Why?
Well, they want ultimate power. Well, I don't know.
So you can. It's all a fraud.
Don't ask me. I don't want to control the world, but you ask these people, the rich elites who started modern history the last 200 years. Yeah. What do you think America's Civil War's about? They fought for the freedom and won.
Liberties,
and every time they come back, and now what's going on in America? Well, they're trying to take away the guns. They're calling Trump and the Patriots are terrorists. But then meanwhile, you had Antifa, Black Lives Matter, burning down cities.
I do want to finish on, I think where we do find common ground is I'm pro-liberty.
Yeah,
right?
well, that's what I'm pro.
I guess
pro-choice, informed consent.
What I'm trying to get clear on, is there ever an instance where I would be where exactly do I draw the line about where I'm happy with the state stepping in and saying, putting a limit on the individual freedoms? Because we have that in other spaces, right? Say for example, drugs. Yep. We have certain restrictions that we place on the individuals in society.
Yep.
In order for community safety, essentially. Like for example,
but that's what they do. They use freedom. Safety to take away your freedom. It's been like that in history.
So
I'm Croatian, mate. My family had to escape communism in Croatia because they're freedom fighters, and they were labelled the same as now the Trump and the Patriot fighters. My father had to row a boat from Italy to Croatia to Italy because he was associated with the Ustaša freedom fighters, which are against communism, and that's the tyranny that's happening now.
So I want to ask you one last question.
Yeah.
What is there an instance where you believe that it is the appropriate role of the state to impose restrictions on the freedoms of the individual? Never. So, for example,
it's called informed consent, mate.
Do you think that the individual, let's say, for example, you wanted to do some ice? Do you think that it should be your
choice, mate?
Even if you pose a risk to the people around you in taking that action?
But what is, I've done ice, mate, but I've never been a risk. I've never been violent, That's 10, 15 years ago.
Some people are, yeah.
Well, there you go,
It's a risk to others.
It's a mental health issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I might let you go on that one, but hey.
Thanks, bro.
To freedom.
277 people died of the virus last year, all right? People are dying with it,
yeah.
not from it, all right? And 80 to 86% over like 80 years of age, all right? So they're just labelling everyone is dying. Yeah, people in car accidents, people are getting shot. They're just saying COVID, all right? It's a scam, mate. It's so obvious. If you can't see it, it's a scam. I can't help you, mate.
It's an orchestrated unleashing of these injections on the people. They are not safe. Mr. Barrick, I think that's his name, he said in emails that have been released.
Who's Mr. Barrick?
He did gain of function stuff on this particular virus. Yep. In 2015, he said the injection was ready to go. All he needed was the media to be on his side and the investors would follow. This is a money-making venture. Secondly, the World Economic Forum has jumped on board. They've got Agenda 2025 and Agenda 2030. This isn't a conspiracy. You can read up. Klaus Schwab's, Yuval Harari, they all want us to be connected to the Internet of Things. They want us to be emitting and to be emitted to. This is what these injections are. Some of these injections have properties in them that are testing us to see how much we can take in order to be able to be tracked and traced, to record our biometrics. That's how they're going to.
It's a control thing in your eyes.
Well, if you look at Yuval Harari,
I've read his books.
Yeah. Well, he openly states that he wants us to be driven by AI. I'm not making this up.
I'm not sure that's what he's, because I've read Homo Deus.
Yeah. Where that's fine, but you see his interviews to camera and his TED Talks, you will find that that's what he's saying. So, he even laughs about what happens when we're in this state where everything's AI. What will people do for work? Yeah. He says, well, we'll just give them drugs and computer games. The guy's insane.
My understanding of his position, he's kind of saying that, well, there are some benefits to the technology, but that we're also going to be sacrificing our privacy in a lot of sectors.
He says that humans are not smart. He reckons AI is smarter than humans.
Which it is sometimes.
No, it isn't. It's only as smart as whoever programs the AI.
maybe just one last thing to leave you with, because we're about to jump in an Uber. Did you know that that AI is better at humans than playing chess now?
Possibly.
So there are certain instances where I think AI.
But life's not a chess.
Yes,
but when,
I get it.
Right? We are far brighter. These people want us to just be slaves to the system, to be controlled.
And who's these people? Who
The
are
globalists.
Do we have some names or
Yeah,
big
we've got
groups?
BlackRock, we've got Vanguard, we've got Street City Bank, we've got Bill Gates openly stating he wants to drop human population down. Klaus Schwab's also said it. Like, I'm not saying it. People can research that stuff and find them.
People to look into.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, thank you so much for your time. You have a lovely rest of your day. Take
Thank
care of
you.
yourself. See you. Vaccine mandates for or against. What's your position and why?
Well, let's go back to, remember I said my body, my choice. So I think being in healthcare for a very long time, 30 years I've
Because
worked.
you were a nurse, weren't you?
Nurse, midwife, maternal and child health nurse. So 3 qualifications. Yeah, 5 years full time at university.
Yep.
And then the mandates came in. See ya. See ya. So I've been unemployed now for, I think, coming up to 10 months. Yes.
And so why? So maybe let's unpack this question into 2 parts.
Yep.
The vaccine and then the mandates. Do you believe in the effectiveness of vaccines generally?
Oh, I'm very pro-vax. Yes, yes.
Okay.
So in my role, I was with childbirth education classes, and I'd always talk about vaccination for children. As a maternal and child health nurse, you talk about at every appointment about vaccinations for children.
Yeah.
So anyone that I've ever seen would know, oh yeah, Kerry's very pro-vaccination.
And so, what if we look at the COVID vaccine in particular?
Yeah.
What are you pro that vaccine or no?
No.
No, and why is that? What makes the COVID vaccine different in your eyes?
Oh, there's 2 parts of that. So is it actually a vaccination? No, it's not. By definition, it's not a vaccination.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? Why not?
So vaccination is normally you're given a little bit of the bacteria, the virus, and allow your immune system to develop antibodies. So then if you're exposed again at a later date, your body can react because it's already been exposed.
Yep.
So this is not a vaccination like that. So most of the RNA is actually...
Yeah, so I got Pfizer, and my
Yes.
understanding, based on the research that I did on it, it was an mRNA vaccine,
Yes.
which meant that it delivered a piece of messenger RNA into my cells, which
Yep.
my ribosomes would then translate into one of the spike proteins,
Yes.
which my body would then create antibodies for,
Yes.
so that if I were exposed to COVID, my body would have already created antibodies that would recognize, hey, this is a pathogen, let's kind of knock it on the head quickly.
Yes, that was the idea. But so you've basically got these little factories in your body that are making the spike proteins.
Yep.
We don't know that that's ever going to be switched off. They haven't studied it long enough. So one of the other reasons why we're so concerned with this is it came out after barely 6 months study. So normally vaccinations, new medications, 7 to 10 years.
Yeah.
They need to do long-term studies to
Yeah.
decide is it safe, is it not. You can't decide it's safe and effective in 6 months.
Yeah, and that was one of the concerns that I had before getting it. I was thinking, okay, we might have some randomized controlled trials that show that it's effective and safe over X amount of time frame.
Yes.
But we don't have, unlike with some of the other vaccines that I might get,
Yeah.
I don't have long-term data on the side
I have
effects.
no idea.
So in a situation like that, perhaps we can keep moving. In a situation like that, I guess the decision that I was making was I was having to choose between, I guess, acknowledging the risks of getting COVID
Yes,
with the
yes.
risks of taking a vaccine that didn't have long-term safety data.
Exactly, and that would be really, really good. So in my classes, I used to use a little, it's an anagram. So BRAIN.
BRAIN.
Yep, spells out brain.
Yep.
So I talk to the class. If your doctor is suggesting an intervention, I was talking more birthing interventions, but let's say a COVID-19 vaccination intervention. B, what are the benefits? You need to look at that. Someone needs to explain to you what are those potential benefits for you. R, risks. A, alternatives. I, what does your intuition say? How do you actually feel about it in your gut? And N is for now or never. So that's actually a big thing with informed consent. So again, being a healthcare worker, geez, we go on and on and on about informed consent. You need to know the benefits, the risks. You normally would talk to your doctor about that. You wouldn't have someone sitting in Parliament saying you're mandated to have something. And certainly not with the preliminary approved medication. The other thing that always makes me...
So just to interrupt, Kerry, so there, do you think that the benefits were perhaps, you know, if all the benefits had been detailed but the risks had not properly been detailed with regard to the vaccine? Is that kind of the claim? Or?
Well, my big concern is that we have been sent an email from APRA, so a regulatory body, telling us we actually can't speak out against the government-mandated vaccinations. So if you do go and speak to someone, they're not going to tell you what those risks are. They have to say it's safe and effective, it's recommended.
Okay, so here is the problem in my eyes, right? Because if there is... where people feel like they are being told an oversimplified version of the truth, it's tapping into that intuition. There's a gut response. This isn't the whole story, and I don't feel comfortable with it. And I think it's really important to give the whole story. So, for example, saying with some of these vaccines, let's say, for example, the mRNA vaccine, the Pfizer one that I got, it's not enough to just say they're safe and effective, no questions asked. It's important to say, hey, based on the data we have, it seems safe and effective. These are the risks currently, but we don't have long-term data.
That's right.
So there is a certain element of risk that might not be present compared to some of the other vaccines.
Yes. And that's so important in getting informed consent. So someone can go, well, actually, what's the risk in me getting COVID? What's the risk?
If you were asked that, what would you have had to say with APRA looking over your shoulder?
With APRA, it would be COVID is a very serious illness. It can cause serious effects and death, and the government are recommending everyone to have the inoculation.
The V word.
I can't call it that. It's not.
Could you have said? And so just to touch on that again, why not call it a vaccine?
Because it's not a vaccine.
But why not?
Because it doesn't do what vaccinations do.
But isn't my understanding was with something like Pfizer, through that mechanism that I described, it has helped my body create the antibodies to fight off COVID. I did get COVID. After the vaccine.
It's not a very good vaccine, then, is it?
Right.
So
there's another conversation to be had around how effective are these vaccines, and then also, I guess, balancing that with the risk of the complications from the vaccine, with also the price that you might pay if you get COVID.
Yes. And if doctors hadn't been silenced by APRA and you could have an actual genuine open discussion about it, brilliant. So my worry, at the moment I'm a non-practicing nurse and midwife. I changed my registration, but hi APRA, they could deregister me at any time because I'm speaking out. And it's like I can't in good conscience keep my mouth shut. It's like I tried really hard. Now I'm just like, oh boy, I just tell everyone everything.
Well, so if we were being like very particular here, what would be something that you would say that APRA would say you can't say that? Right, let's say we're having a consult, I haven't been vaccinated, and I'm sitting down with you and I say, hey, I'm tossing up whether or not to get the vaccine. Can you walk me through the costs and benefits?
Yeah. So you'd go through the benefits. Okay, well, it may for some people mean that you get a less severe dose of COVID. So where the initial research came out and said, oh, maybe it will... Actually, no, I can't even tell a lie with that. If you go back to the initial research that Pfizer did, they never looked at the transmissibility of whether the inoculation reduces people catching COVID. They never looked at that.
Right.
So, unfortunately, the Australian government, they really didn't look at what was happening overseas. So we had Israel, who was months ahead of us. UK, USA, months ahead in terms of their rollout. We didn't look at their data. We just went, oh no, Pfizer says it's safe and effective, we're going to roll it out. So that was something I had a major problem with. You can't just look at this spot. I guess maybe that's from nursing. You look at the whole picture. We also never, in healthcare once upon a time, looked at a Pfizer study and said, oh yes, the Pfizer company says it's safe and effective, and we'd never believe them. It'd be like...
I know that there are some big concerns around big pharma, whether there are some perverse incentives, whether there are the proper checks and balances.
Yes. A drug company saying our drug works, you take their study with a grain of salt, you go, okay, what other studies were done that actually supports that? Because the drug company is always going to say our drug works and it's safe because they want their drug put on the market.
Yeah. My understanding, so again, based on the research that I did before I got the Pfizer vaccine, my understanding is there were some randomized controlled trials that concluded it's effective to a certain degree.
Yes.
And that also, I also under the impression that it was reducing, if you did catch COVID, that your ability to transmit it was somewhat reduced as well. And maybe there are some updates that I need to look into, but that was the impression I was under.
Yes.
So let's say that you're running me through these various potential benefits of the vaccine.
Yeah.
Was there, in terms of going through that brain, what's it called, a mnemonic or whatever?
Yeah, I call it an acronym, but I'm not an English teacher. I'm not sure that's...
So the R, the risk, were there any risks that you could bring to the table with a patient and say, hey, you need to be aware of this? Or did you have to say they're safe and effective, full stop?
Yes, well, if I'm to follow APRA, it's safe and effective. There's the usual risk that you might get a sore arm, that maybe you might have a temperature, and very, very rare, myocarditis.
Yep.
These other
Especially
things
for young
are very,
men.
very rare. Yes. But
which wasn't something that, like, I had to go looking for the side effects to really understand that was something that particularly faced me. I believe they are quite public about that, though.
yes.
Would you have been able to bring that up in a consult with a patient?
I don't know that the doctors still are. Pharmacists who've been giving the COVID-19 inoculations, I don't think they've actually been discussing a whole lot about the risks.
Risks and whatnot.
Yes.
So in a situation like that, would I be right to then conclude that if they haven't properly been run through the benefits and the risks, there's no possibility for informed consent?
No, correct.
Right,
correct.
okay.
And on top of that, if you actually go to the Australian Immunisation Handbook, it actually says if you're being coerced, manipulation or undue pressure, you cannot give a legal valid consent.
Right.
So with being threatened,
Undue pressure,
no jab,
mandate.
no job,
Yeah.
I can't actually give a legal consent even if I wanted to go and have it.
Right.
So this is a big problem where people were really stuck. Well, do I go and I lie and say, oh yes, I'm giving consent and I go and have it? Or actually, I know someone who did write all over their consent form, I don't consent, I'm under coercion, I've been threatened, no jab, no job, and they still gave it to her.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
technically, that's well open for a criminal court case to go to court and say you actually assaulted that person by giving it.
Yeah, or you
So
have,
that's
yeah,
another
they
problem.
haven't been informed. Yeah,
No,
giving informed
no.
consent. And I heard I heard a similar story. I can't remember who it was exactly that I was speaking to, but they were saying that they had been given the ultimatum: no jab, no job, pretty
Yeah.
much, and they had kids and a family to provide for.
Yeah.
Is it really a choice at that point?
No, no, it's
and
not blackmail.
we spoke to an epidemiologist yesterday, and it was so interesting going back and forth with her
Yeah.
and unpacking like why she believed the mandates were necessary. And she was saying, she was making the case for herd immunity, that in order for the vaccines to be effective, we need to hit a certain degree of... I see you shaking your head, Tom. So if you were speaking to someone who was saying vaccines are necessary to hit herd immunity,
Yes.
and that if you don't get the vaccine, you're essentially a risk to the rest of the community, what would you say to someone like that?
Yes. For someone like that, I would say you need to have a look overseas. You need to have a look at the population of Israel, where their vaccination rates were well above 95%. the vaccination, unfortunately, isn't actually giving anyone immunity. These people are now actually catching COVID. There's a couple of really good doctors out there.
My understanding is that that's because
it's mutating.
Yeah, which is why there are boosters now and why we might need additional vaccines.
There's no point boosting for a mutant strain that was around 12 months ago. So the alpha strain, which is what people are having the current COVID-19 inoculation, that was well gone. We're past Delta now.
Yeah, why couldn't it be like the flu, where each season people get the new flu vaccine, or they have the choice to get the new flu vaccine in order to make sure that they are protected against the new strain? Why couldn't we have new vaccines that are then protecting us against new strains of COVID?
If they can do that, again, my body, my choice. If you want to go and have the COVID-19 inoculation, knock yourself out. I just want people to be given the benefits, be given the risk, and be able to make their own informed decision, not be mandated by government. It's like the flu vaccine, until this year, has never been mandated. So for me to return to work, I'd need 3 COVID-19 jabs and a flu vax. I've always had the flu vaccine, but that was my choice. It's like, if you want to have a COVID-19 inoculation every year, go for it, you know?
So if there was good data on the safety and efficiency or effectiveness of these new vaccines for COVID, and you were given the choice, would you vaccinate?
I said to my friend, if you can show me in 10 years' time, once you've done the long-term study, that it's safe and effective, I'll be the first person to line up and have it. I was joking about Dan Andrews is the latest Harvey Weinstein. Like, I'm not having Dan's little prick in my body if I don't want it.
Vaccine mandates for or against?
Against.
Against, and tell me why.
I think it is a human rights violation, and that it is just blatant government overreach. I'm not against the vaccines that they've produced for COVID. Things like Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and all the rest of it. But I do think it is a conversation between a doctor and a patient, and that there has been just complete egregious government just stepping in the middle and just saying, no, you must do this. There have been doctors that have had concerns about it, and they've been gagged by groups such as APRA, or censored by the media, or just lambasted by the media. And the thing is, we're constantly told, trust the experts. It's like, well, these people are also experts. If science isn't, a hegemony, people are meant to have discussions and stuff, and if people have concerns and want to raise things, is it not incumbent on them to raise it? So I've been very concerned about the government overreach and trying to be, big daddy government essentially, mixed in with a lot of the censorship for dissident voices.
Right, and so to people who might say, well, we need mandates in order to achieve some kind of herd immunity and get to a particular percentage of the population vaccinated, and then that makes everyone safer. What would you say to those people who believe that?
Well, people that have gotten COVID have got natural immunity as well. This is the thing, this is a virus. We've never done this for, say, the flu. The flu is also something that, constantly smashes the elderly and the immunocompromised. These discussions were just a non-factor in the past. People were just adults who made their own, responsible decisions for things. So the idea that there is some kind of herd immunity, maybe a case could have been raised for, say, Alpha or something like that, but we had Delta and Omicron and all these other variants. They're becoming more virulent but less dangerous. So we have well and truly hit a point. Because everyone was saying, the unvaxxed, you're in for, Biden said, you're in for illness of death and, disease and stuff like that. And then, you have a crowd of unvaxxed people going, well, we're waiting. When am I going to die? Let me know. Can I schedule it in? It just kind of gets absurd after a while.
So I want to kind of unpack as well, with something like lockdowns. Would you ever see a lockdown as appropriate or necessary for maybe a certain time period in an emergency?
Honestly, I'm kind of at the point where no. Maybe that's my bias, just going through a lot of Melbourne lockdowns and seeing not only how I've suffered, but just the consequences around us. We're in a mental health epidemic right now that is far worse than what COVID could have been, in my opinion, and that has been quietly acknowledged by groups such as Dan Andrews when he mysteriously quadrupled mental health resources. The ambulance sector is currently absolutely crippled. The economy is absolutely ruinous. A lot of people are out of jobs. There has just been so many consequences to lockdowns that, if it was to come up, I'm not outright saying never, but there needs to be some very serious discussions if it was to come up next time.
Yeah, so my sense is that there's two main kind of disagreements. One is how severe is COVID? How dangerous is it? Okay. And then also two, once we've established that, what's the appropriate course of action? So if COVID let's just say that, let's forget about COVID for the moment. Let's
Yeah,
say
yeah.
there was a highly, highly dangerous virus,
Like Ebola or something.
like Ebola, and let's say that we had highly, highly effective and safe vaccines for it.
Yep.
Would you see, in an instance like that, would you ever be pro-mandate or pro-lockdown?
No, I think people would make their own responsible decisions. People who broke, people who were, breaking lockdown rules or not wearing a mask or something like that, the accusation that they got thrown at them a lot was that they are selfish. And, my first thought was well, if they're selfish, then they're self-interested people, so would they not be interested in their own survival? Which then comes down to the root cause that, people are going to make decisions that are best for them. So if there was a super deadly Ebola disease, I think, the selfish people would be the ones staying at home and the ones that would be getting the jab because it would be the best thing for them.
Yeah, right. I think where you tell me what you think about this. This might be where we diverge in terms of what we believe, but I want to kind of find exactly what we can find common ground on where we diverge. So in an instance like that, I'm still trying to figure this out myself. I might be okay with a temporary lockdown so as to then use that opportunity to educate the public on exactly why the vaccine might be the right move, right? But then I believe it ought to be the public's decision, is this the right move for me? So I believe that if the public is educated enough on the risks and benefits of the vaccine in comparison with the virus at hand, then we would make the right decision ourselves. But that would mean that in certain instances, I would be supportive of a lockdown as long as it was temporary. And we also need to have conversations about exactly when we would be okay with that.
That's
That's
exactly the issue because I don't mandates and lockdowns and things at the very start. No one was against it, except for what was actually considered a fringe minority at the time. Everyone, when COVID first came out and people had no idea about it, no idea, what was going to happen. Yeah, everyone supported 2 weeks because the original sale was 2 weeks to prepare the health sector. And everyone's just all right, cool, 2 weeks, cool, fine. We get more information, we do that. No one was actually really. No one was actually really against that. The issue became is that the government was incredibly unaccountable towards it because everything that they did with this kind of morality, it's we know what's best for you. And then the second disagreements and stuff started coming up, then they were censored and all the rest of it. I don't think as a principle lockdowns are, the worst thing in the world. Politically I'm libertarian and so, naturally I'm going to be very averse to it, but it's not an absolute impossibility. But just with the way that governments have operated all across the world, I couldn't support it without a massive change in the institution itself.
So just one last question for you. In response to everything that's happened to COVID, specifically in Victoria, what would you say to Dan Andrews if you were going to have a conversation with him?
Honestly, I would say, I have broken basically every mandate, every decree you put down. I attended illegal protests. I illegally entered stores when, there was a period in time where I was not allowed to enter Kmart legally. It was illegal for me to enter Kmart. I did it anyway. I had to sneak in so I could buy luxury items such as shoes. There was just all these, just the insanity around it was I'm still here. You told me I was a risk to myself, you told me I was a risk to everything, that I was going to die, I was going to have the worst time ever. I am still here, and if anything, I'm stronger than ever, so why? Why are you so wrong?
What would you do differently? If you were Premier, what would you have done differently?
I would have gone the Ron DeSantis approach, and, I would have given educational advice, look, here are the facts, here are what we know, and, the actual facts, not just the one-sided narrative, because these things are discussions, these things do have contrary opinions, and I would let adults make their own decision. Ron DeSantis did it. He was absolutely excoriated by the media. Oh my God, it's going to be a cesspit of death and disease and all the rest of it. And they historically, for quite a while, before things kind of balanced out with the rest of the states, they were having the lowest COVID infections and they were having the lowest COVID deaths.
So what I noticed you mentioned there the real facts. What do you think are some of the facts that are being hidden from the public? What are the facts that we're being told and how are they incorrect?
Well, there was the major lie that the vaccine mandate, the vaccines would prevent infection and would prevent you from spreading to others. That was an outright lie, and that was an outright lie with the flagship event from the vaccinated economy here in Victoria. I don't know if anyone remembers, but the first vaccinated-only event in Victoria during lockdown was the horse races. And so only vaccinated people were allowed to enter, and the day after, 50 people tested positive for COVID. So that in itself should have been an outright lie. But then the political...
Just to kind of push back a little bit there, could it be possible that people who weren't actually vaccinated got access to the event? And then also, two, could it not be that, I guess something, I also want to give some leniency to our leadership, because it's a tough situation where they may get the facts wrong. But I think if that's the case, we ought to be, I want our leaders to be able to say, hey, we got the facts wrong, here's the updated facts.
But they don't do that. Well, okay, so on point one about people lying, people who are lying about their vaccination status are not going to be testing, going to a testing centre if they show up symptoms. They're not going to.
Did you just say that you got into Kmart, for example, without having vaccinated?
Yeah, I snuck in.
Couldn't that
I didn't have a fake certificate.
Couldn't that same thing have happened at the races?
Yeah, but that still completely defeats the purpose that you won't catch COVID and you won't spread it. Because the people who get tested for COVID, they are most likely going to be other rule followers. So they're going to be people going, oh, of course I wear a mask, of course I got my jabs, of course I'm going to do the right thing, what the government told me. So people who are, lying about, their vaccination status during the vaccinated economy, they are not going to be the people who test. So I don't think that is going to be accurate that people who, attended these events, would have done it. On the second point on accountability, okay, that was an argument at the start, okay, we've made mistakes and all the rest of it. But the core of the issue is that when you have taken away people's freedom, so freedom of movement, 5K lockdowns, 1 hour of exercise, we're prisoners in our own country, you also take responsibility for that. And we were not seeing the responsibility when people were making, there was a suicide epidemic happening silently during the pandemic, and there was no responsibility taken for it. So yes, people are going to naturally make mistakes, and I think it's good to be front and center about it, but we didn't see the accountability that would have been expected.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Roseanne Frank-Poley. I'm an epidemiologist at Monash University.
Fantastic. I'm Rich.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you.
Yeah. Interesting that you studied medicine and you're against.
Yes. So this will be a good one. So can you walk me through first why you are for vaccine mandates, and then we'll unpack it from there.
Okay. So start off with vaccines. There are a lot of different vaccines. So obviously most recently we've been talking about the COVID vaccine, which has sparked a lot of debate. And there's always been debate over vaccines, but very few people are actually actively not getting the other vaccines. So it's, I think it's around 1% of people don't have the vaccines from childbirth, that when you're born and you have your vaccines, and of those only 1% are actively not getting them. So it's very few people that with very loud voices that don't get vaccines. And of course we know that vaccines can be helpful. I think that in many cases
we would definitely find common ground here. So I believe in the I'm not sure what the right word is, whether it's the efficiency or effectiveness of vaccines in certain cases. So that's where we would find common ground. Beyond that, if we can agree that vaccines can do a lot of good, let's unpack why you're for mandates and why I'm currently against mandates, and see, who knows, we might leave this conversation with both of us being for. So I'd love to hear why you're for mandates then.
So when you say mandates, you're saying that government regulations to say that, for instance, no jab, no play in childcare?
Yeah,
or
maybe that's one type of mandate. Maybe we could take it one step more extreme of saying you must get this vaccine and put it in your body.
Yes.
So which one would you be for in that?
Well, I guess, for instance, no jab, no play, there's still choice there. So you're choosing whether or not to send your child to childcare. So if you're not against
some people are
vaccines, you can choose not to send your children to childcare and not have them vaccinated.
Yep.
And they're saying there is still
sorry to interrupt, is there also a no jab, no work in certain instances as well?
For COVID, there has been some regulations around work and having vaccinations with the COVID vaccine. So that's what I was actually about to say. There has been. I'm not sure what occupations they are, but I have met people that have left the workforce.
I know healthcare. I think teaching was one of them. I had a friend who didn't want to get the vaccine and she had to resign. And I wonder whether I might be for or against in different situations or different maybe sectors or industries. So let's maybe narrow it down a little bit more. For something like no jab, no play, why are you then for mandates, those types of mandates?
So essentially, vaccines are protecting the person they're taking the vaccine, but really what we're doing is creating herd immunity, and then the people that are most susceptible.
I'd love for you to tell, for people who aren't familiar with the idea of herd immunity, you walk us through it.
So herd immunity is effectively that if you have a lot of people around you that are vaccinated and there's one person in the middle that's not vaccinated, the vaccine can't sort of get to you because the people around you can't obtain the disease because they're vaccinated.
Yeah.
So there's certain people in the community that cannot have the vaccines. Maybe they're more susceptible, maybe they're preterm births, for instance, and they can't have the vaccine, but everyone around them has a vaccine. It means that they can't get that illness.
Yeah.
And that's effectively why we have no jab, no play, because we're trying to protect the most vulnerably unhealthy people or most vulnerable people in our society. So it's a societal collective belief or thought that we're not just protecting ourselves, it's about everyone that we live with.
Yeah, and so I think this is probably the strongest case for mandates is the, say for example, with something like no jab, no play, if you are doing something that is putting the rest of the community at risk, you don't deserve to benefit from the fruits of the community, like for example childcare, something like that.
So that's effectively what the argument is. So you've said that we live in a community, we all benefit from each other being in this community. For instance, I didn't build the train station behind you, but I get to ride those trains every day. Someone's driving those trains, and I pay very fractional cost to use these privileges in our society.
Yes.
And part of that is being around people, and part of that is making sure that I can keep those people safe.
Yes. So can I walk you through why I'm currently against mandates, and I want you to push back a little bit and maybe see what I might be missing. So my sense is that if we have really good data with regard to the effectiveness of particular vaccines and why, and perhaps also the danger of particular illnesses and why we ought to take the vaccine, my sense is that the role of the government ought to be then educating you and I to the point, and I guess it also takes us being open to being educated, to the point where we have the information we need as citizens to make the right decision. And if we make the right decision, or if we make the decision that getting the vaccine is right for us, then fantastic. And if the data and the information is strong enough and it's also been communicated well enough, then we would achieve herd immunity by way of education as opposed to mandate. Why do you disagree with me on that?
I think you're very articulated it very well, where we need to spend money not only producing the science behind vaccines but the communication. I've encountered only a very few people that are completely anti-vaccine, like completely. And unfortunately, the conversations I've had is that they've been completely misguided by false science or science that's completely outdated. So, for instance, there may be a scientific paper that is saying there could be a potential of a link. We need to investigate it further, but it's published. And what people do is they catch on to this scary association. And instead of it being like another study or another paper being produced to say yes or no, that just gets circulated.
Yes, and
that's
so
the problem, is that it's in debate, and that's part of science is debate. We're publishing to debate ideas.
Yes.
And sometimes if the media gets in, they make it huge when it's actually just a discussion.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I think that's where it's quite difficult to try and separate, or I'm finding with a lot of these topics, to separate the science from the politics. And it's like sometimes you got to go looking through, or you got to filter through the news to get to, okay, what do we know to be true? Like kind of coming back to first principles and then building up from there. And I also know that there's always going to be a small demographic or group of people that, if they're not given the full story very, very efficiently or easily in a way that's easy to digest, they may well, and maybe this is a temperament thing, but they may well find one piece of evidence that is contrary to the wider narrative and latch onto it and kind of run with that. So I heard someone the other day say that it's like the less clear and easy to access information there is, the easier it is to fill out the space with conspiracy theories. So it's like almost the best way to get rid of unfounded conspiracy theories and the actions that might follow from them is fill in all the gaps with the best data that we have in a way that's really easy to digest.
I agree with that, and I'm going to sum up because I've got 4 points to make, and I think that we can both agree with these. So first of all, good science, robust science.
Yes.
Second of all, money and thought into communicating the ideas around vaccines and their effectiveness and how they protect not only you but everyone around you.
Yep.
Third of all, which I haven't mentioned, but a lot of the people that are unvaccinated, it's hard to get rural areas. So increasing availability of vaccines to those people that are not objecting to the vaccines is really important for vaccine use. And also 4, I don't know how they could do this in just Australia, maybe they can do it for us, but reducing the algorithms on social media so that you don't get these conspiracy theories into our inboxes if you just are...
The echo chambers.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a huge problem because once you are just investigating it, you might be interested to hear the other side of the story, suddenly you're bombarded and then you can start really believing it when it's not true.
100%, and that's where Facebook, Insta, TikTok, whatever, they know that to keep you on the platform, we need to take her further down that particular conspiracy theory rabbit hole. One last question that I have before I let you go is I want to just bring it specifically to COVID. I know that some people, we might be able to find common ground that there is a virus, people are at risk, people are dying, but there's differences in how much people believe the people's individual liberties ought to be restricted. How much should the healthy majority be expected to give up for the at-risk minority? With something like that, why can't just the at-risk minority, say people with pre-existing medical conditions or chronic illnesses or the elderly, why can't they get the vaccine and then for everybody else, it's their choice to get the vaccine or not?
I'll try to be really succinct because I think this is really important. First of all, I'm not an expert on COVID, specifically vaccines, but I think there's some points I can make. So first of all, COVID vaccine is in its infancy. In 10 or 20 years, we'll have a perfect vaccine, I'm sure. But right now, it's not 100% effective. And I think that's where some of the problems have been coming from in this case. With older people and people that have chronic diseases and in nursing homes, they need help. And so then the community needs to come into their lives to help them. I mean, the people that are in trouble, the susceptible people, are not going to be able to isolate themselves and just live independently by themselves most of the time. So you can have seen a disproportionate amount of how much COVID restrictions have affected different cohorts, and one of them's been nursing homes, and it's actually really sad to think that over the last couple of years in Melbourne, Australia, we've had the worst restrictions in the world. There's been people living in their rooms, not really leaving their own room for a year or two. And they don't, a lot of nursing homes even removed group feeding times. So they have been doing that.
In the name of protection.
In the name of protection. And so then the question is, where's our mental health? And then when we close down businesses, where's the economy? Where's the mental health associated with reduced economy for business owners that are losing their business? And that's a huge discussion that has been discussed on forums and by professionals. But I do agree that I think that that's where we're at now, where we're having a high wave of COVID. It's not as severe. So that's been one of the things that the government's taken into account. But I also see how we probably have had a bit of a backlash and can't restrict again with a less severe like we have at the moment. So I feel like we're taking that into account this wave.
Maybe we're learning from subsequent.
And the fact that it's not as severe.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap for today's episode. If you appreciate what we're doing here, you believe in the mission of asking the important but controversial questions and then trying to find common ground, you believe that dialogue is the way, then you can support us by liking the video and subbing to the channel. We'd also love to hear from you over on our Insta. If you have any questions that you think we should ask, just shoot us a DM with your ideas. And now it's your turn to keep the dialogue flowing. Stay curious, stay open-minded. If you're interested, you can grab yourself a deck of our controversial conversation cards. We now offer free worldwide shipping on them, and they're a great way to open up these convos in your own life with family and friends in a fun, playful, and non-threatening way. And with all that said, take care of yourselves. I wish you the absolute best until I see you in the next episode. Godspeed.